Welcome to MindTricks Radio, where we'll explore contemporary topics in psychology through interviewing creative and innovative thinkers in the field. I'm your host, Dr. Aaron Kaplan. Thanks for tuning in. We're here today with Carla Ondrasik, author of the Amazon bestseller Stop Trying, The Life-Transforming Power of Trying Less and Doing More. Formerly the VP of Creative Writer Development at EMI Music Publishing, she's worked with top songwriters in the industry to make dreams a reality for musicians. Now, a coach and mentor, she's dedicated to spreading words of inspiration and motivation through coaching, workshops, panel discussions, speaking engagements, podcasts, and of course her book, Stop Trying. Carla, welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me this morning.
I'm so excited to speak with you today. I read your book, Stop Trying, and I just was absolutely floored. It was such a wonderful book, and I'm sure is going to be so helpful to my patients. So congratulations on that, and great job. And, you know, I really like to spend some time getting to know my guests before we get into the meat of the interview. So I'd like to ask you a little bit about your background. But before we get to that, I need to get one thing out of the way. You don't like that word try very much, do you?
Not at all. I don't like it at all.
I kind of gathered that from the book, and I'd like to hear all about the reasons why, and we're going to talk about that. And so to start with, you have a very interesting background. Tell us a bit about your background. I know you were in the songwriting business for many years, but I'm not sure how that sort of coalesced into your current incarnation of your professional life as a motivational speaker and a coach and all of that. So tell us a bit about your background and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, it's so amazing. I mean, I never, ever thought I'd be an author and a motivational speaker. But going backwards, I was raised in New York, on Long Island, New York. I'm one of three girls, and my dad was a gambler. So that will tell you that my life was not conventional. And, my parents were together till the day my dad passed away, like 11 years ago. My mom's still alive, but, they had this incredible relationship. So, there were times in our life growing up, it was like, get in the car, we're leaving for the week, and, it was very fluid. Things changed suddenly. And there was a time, when I was about 13 that my whole life disappeared. The dog, the Barbie dolls, my home, my friends, it was uprooted. So, it really caused me to be a person that just can think on my feet and adapt to a situation. And I brought that into my adult life. And I've had some really incredible jobs. One was working for the Department of Defense. I started out in waving people through the gate, checking badges, but very quickly moved up to top secret security clearance, flown in by helicopter. And then I worked for an aviation company where I was the employee relations coordinator, communicating with people on the shop floor and upper management and making sure needs were met, which I loved. And then the universe threw me the biggest curveball in the world. And that was, I met a songwriter who had a song on the radio. And at the time, I was dating a guy who was an engineer and writing songs when he came home from work. And I thought, I can help get him songs on the radio. And that threw me into the whole world of music publishing. And I just started working with songwriters, and I got one job after another job after another job. And I love to make people's dreams come true. It's what I did in my other careers, when I was working with and employee relations. And in music publishing, I'd take a songwriter who wanted to have a song on a record, and it was my job to put writers together, to sign them, to develop them, to get their songs on hit records. And so my final position was vice president of creative writer development for EMI on the West Coast, which was the biggest publishing company in the world at the time. Not many women in those kind of positions. And how I got there was, through being very aggressive and doing a lot of doing action, nothing hesitant. And I placed songs with everybody from, the oldies but the goodies, Earth, Wind and Fire, Johnny Mathis, Barbra Streisand, all the way up to NSYNC, Christina Aguilera, Mariah Carey, country, Martina McBride. I mean, I gave songs to so many people, and I discovered my husband. He performs under the moniker Five for Fighting, and he's Grammy nominated and still touring. Was just in your state of Hawaii recently, and
Yeah, I
his
was just
his
going to
hits
say, playing
are.
at the Blue Note, right?
He was at the Blue Note for 2 nights, 4 shows. He was so great, and I heard his voice through a wall, and I'm like, that voice needs to be on the radio. So
Hmm.
I signed him to a publishing deal, developed him as a writer, and then got him the record deal, then married him,
Hmm.
which leads us up to the present time. We have 2 children, and I'm a workhorse. I left my job because John's career took off. We had our little kids. Of course, I volunteered at school. I'm the president of my HOA. I'm on many boards, the local zoo board. I just work, 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 work. The common thread through all of this, what made me successful in all those careers is my mindset. And it's not using one word that affects your mindset and your actions, which is try. And the opportunity came. I really thought, if I don't write this book and share my message with people, I'm going to regret it.
Well, what was the aha moment where you recognized that and you took your experiences in your life and converted into writing the book?
The aha moment really just started from being a child and being thrown into situations where you've got to sink or swim.
Hmm.
Like, trying is not an option here. I'm not able to just passively go. I'm in the deep end of the ocean, and I got to get out of it. I got to find my life preservers. I have to. There's nothing hesitant about figuring things out. And when you're in the middle of even music publishing, there are thousands of songs that wanted to get on one 10-song album, right? There were hundreds and thousands of publishers worldwide. What's going to make me the one that gets my songwriter on that record? And not only on the record, but the single, the song everybody hears. So I realized that I don't ever wish, hope, or want. It's doing, having, and being. I jump straight to the end game. So maybe it's, as a mom and, being involved in motivating people all the time, just naturally, that word always triggered me. It just set off bells and whistles, and it made me crazy every time I heard it. So the opportunity came up for me to write a book, and I thought, I'm going to take it and I'm going to do this without any experience. I'd never read a book about writing a book. I never desired to be an author, but I just thought, I'm being presented with these opportunities. I'm going to do it.
Well, you're definitely a doer, Carla. That's very evident, and you've done a lot of really amazing things in your life and quite a varied number of things, and that's really remarkable. But let's dig into this a little bit more. So, the difference between trying and doing, one might argue that trying to do something is the first step to doing it. I have a feeling you don't see it that way. How are they getting it wrong?
Yeah, I'll just back up to answer that question. So, what we think trying means and what it really means are 2 different things. So, we think that trying is that brave first step. We think trying is doing. And if you look at any dictionary definition, they'll say trying is an attempt or an effort to do something.
Hmm.
But the real definition of trying is a half-hearted attempt or an effort to do something. And we know this, by the way. So there's a huge difference. When you say, I'm going to try to do something, here's an example. Unconsciously, like subconsciously, we know it's already in there. So my job is to bring it to the forefront of our minds and use it as a tool every day. That's my goal. You can still try. You can still choose to try, but I want to make sure that you understand what you're doing and what's happening neurologically in your brain when you say you're going to try to do something instead of, I'm going to do it. And just a little housekeeping here, doing doesn't guarantee success.
Yeah.
Doing guarantees you a better chance at success. Okay. And I'm not talking semantics. So imagine, you have your coffee mug in front of you this morning and you say, I'm going to try to take a sip. Odds are you're going to pick up the cup and take a sip. I'm talking about big ticket items, our health, our happiness, our careers, our relationships, as in, I'm trying to work on my marriage. I'm trying to lose weight. People try to lose weight for their whole lives or try to quit smoking for decades. So when I said it's already in there, think about, would you go to a bank that says, okay, Carla, we're going to try to keep track of your money here, and we're going to try to have it available to you when you want to withdraw. Would you feel confident giving your money to that bank?
Yeah, of course not. Right.
Probably not, right? You rent an apartment and they don't say, look, can you just try to pay your rent every month? If you don't pay your rent, you're going to get evicted. Or you can't try to pay your mortgage or you're going to go into foreclosure, right? So we're not allowed to try and we don't choose to try. It's already in there. We don't send our kids out on their first solo drive saying, hey, try to drive carefully and try to stop at the stop signs and
Right.
try not to be distracted. There's no try in there, So it's in there, but sadly, we do try because we're tricked into thinking that we're doing, and it's not in our conscious mind every day.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So semantically speaking, you can tell yourself you're going to try something, and you can tell yourself you're going to do something. And in either case, you may end up not doing it, or you may not succeed at doing it. But what I'm hearing is that there's something in the emotional valence of the word try that's different with do that sets you up for a greater chance of not completing or not succeeding at that task. And you talk in your book about seeming to people sometimes like if you try, you're being brave, but you make some interesting statements in there that it's actually the opposite of that, that there's something in trying versus doing that's the opposite of bravery. Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Trying is, first of all, dipping your toe in the water. And you think about it, it's very hesitant and passive. Well, you even say it softly, oh, okay, I'll give it a try, right?
Yeah,
You're like, oh, I'll try. As opposed to, I'm doing it. Your voice gets louder, you sit up taller, you're more confident, you're entering it from a really strong position. But I'll give it a try is just much smaller and weaker. You're building in the intention and the potential for failure when you say I'll try, because that means it may not happen. I'm going to try. I may fail, but at least I'll try. And it's not brave to rely on and use excuses. So, okay, I tried to be here at 9 o'clock, but I forgot that it was 9. I thought it was 9:30. So there's an excuse. Okay.
yeah,
Or blame. I tried to get here at 9 o'clock, but I had some emails that I had to return, so I'm late. So there's blame. And there's no accountability. So it's not brave when, okay, I tried, I didn't do it, so sue me, right? Look, I only said I would try, I didn't say I would do it. All those things are completely different when you say, I will be there at 9 o'clock. Because what happens is you do not return those last few emails walking out the door. You make sure you have gas in the car the night before. Trust me, if you were meeting a doctor that had a 9 o'clock appointment for you and it was to save your life, you wouldn't show up at 9:30.
right,
You wouldn't say, I tried to get here. And
right.
we don't try to get to the airport to make our flight because there's so much riding on it, right? We've spent a lot of money on a ticket. So it's completely different. It's not brave. It's very passive and very hesitant and very safe. And we do it because, it's not our fault. Taught to try. We've been taught, try harder, try your best, give it a try, right? Just try it. So we have to unlearn that. We
Hmm.
have to really start really shining the spotlight on how this word is hurting us instead of helping us. And
So telling yourself you're going to try is sort of hedging. It gives you the opportunity not to succeed. Whereas telling yourself I'm going to do that, it's brave because you're committing to something that you might not succeed at. And that's really the brave thing, right? Committing to something, I'm going to do this, this is going to happen. And if it doesn't, well, I guess there's the consequences of failing at something, and we can talk about that too, but that does
Yeah.
happen in life. But that's the brave thing, is facing the possibility of failing at something with your full gusto. I think that's what I hear you saying.
Absolutely. Facing fear, right? That's brave. When you face the unknown, that's brave. Not like, stepping back on the side and trying hesitantly and running away the minute it's like I love the dip your toe in the water analogy. Oh, it's too cold, it's not comfortable, I'm not going to do it,
Yeah, you
right?
just got to jump in.
Dive into that deep. Just jump in. It's going to be
Right.
awesome.
And anybody
You
from
may,
Hawaii knows that. Yeah, I mean, you just,
right?
it's warm outside, so the water is warm, but it's cold compared to the ambient temperature outside. And you don't just dip your toe in, you dive in head
Yeah,
first. You ask
yeah,
any
yeah,
surfer, they're not hesitant about getting into the water.
exactly. And you may want to get out and you may not like it, but at least you went in and you experienced it. You allowed yourself the opportunity to experience whatever it is. That's the important thing.
Right. So when we're telling ourselves try instead of do, the messages we're telling ourselves and the consequences are what? That this may not happen, or it's not going to happen, or we can't make it happen, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we're telling ourselves that, okay, so say we're going to try, first of all, we are afraid of failure. So we're only going to offer, okay, well, I'm going to try to start a business or I'm trying to write a screenplay, right? And you don't want to say I'm doing it because what if you fail? What are people going to think of me? Are they going to judge me, right? And when you say you're trying, you can procrastinate. It allows the most beautiful environment for procrastination,
Hmm.
and it just allows this kind of easy route with a lot of distractions. And people try. It happened to me on a certain level. They fear failure and they fear success. I'm going to try it. I'm not going to go all in. I'm not going to like just commit to this because what if it's successful, right? I'm older, my kids are launched, I've had all these careers, I work nonstop, I'm still on all these boards. But what if this book is successful? I start Instagramming and social media and returning emails and getting back into the workforce. So that was a reason that would make me kind of want to just try to write the book and half-heart it and string it out and never complete it, but sound like I'm doing something, right? Kind of
Yeah.
pacify myself to think that I'm doing something. And, we don't even realize that we're afraid of success or, the reason we're not going all in is because we're afraid of what people will think of us. So, there's so many reasons that we choose to try.
So, around this idea of the fear of success, this comes up a lot with my patients in my practice. And I'm not sure if you've heard this or what you think about this idea, but like for me, I see people, they see the idea of succeeding at something and it just sort of like ups the bar a little bit. So like now I've reached this level of success and the expectations of me are just that much higher, and then I could really fail. I mean, it's like I've higher to fall, and it's sort of like this unending cascade of fearing of failing, and so why even get yourself into that cycle? That's another side of it, I think.
Yeah, I think maybe what you're saying is, for people that, okay, I'm going to do this, and if I'm successful, okay, now people are going to need more from me. Now I'm going
Yeah.
to have to keep going and going. So this is a great time to say, trying is a mental exercise, physical action for trying. Doing is a physical action. I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to touch my nose. I'm touching my nose. Or I'm going to take my finger and not touch my nose. But there's nothing in between. The trying to touch my nose is like, wait, what do I do with my finger? Right?
Hmm.
So it's the trying part is thinking about, worrying about, wondering about, making the lists, all the things I'm trying to get done and not actually doing them. And I have a great story. Do you want to hear it?
Sure.
I would take my kids to the park every morning and we'd see this guy walking around the park with headphones on. And I'd see him all the time, every day. And I could never interrupt him. I would walk the dog after the kids got on the bus. And one day, after months, I saw him like playing with his headphone. And I'm like, now's my chance. I'm gonna like, is he listening to Five for Fighting? Like, what does this guy listen to every day? And so I said, hi, I see you here all the time. I'm so curious. What do you listen to? And he goes, I'm listening to a lot of podcasts, a lot of books on tape. I listen to a lot of TED Talks and motivational things. And there's so many things in my life that I'm trying to do, and I just can't seem to, stick to it and get things done. And of course, I hear that word try. My brain
Yeah.
just goes ding, 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 ding. So I looked at this perfect stranger and I said to him, tell me one thing that you're trying to do. One thing. And he said, I'm trying to get back into swimming because I obviously need to get back physical again. And we have a brand new pool at the YMCA down the street. So I'm trying to go swim. And I looked at this guy and all I said to him was, why don't you stop trying to go swim and go swim? And that was it. And he's like, nice to meet you, headphones on, walked away. And I thought, I'm never going to see this guy. I just like, I couldn't help myself. I did it. I said it. Oh my gosh. 24 hours later, same time, I got to take the kids to the bus. This guy is standing across the park, like waiting for me, screaming, I did it. I did it. I swam. I didn't try. I swam. And in that moment, I'm like, that is exactly what trying is. He was spending all this time listening, waiting for the motivation, listening to how to do things, listening to all the information, talking about it, worrying about it, wondering about it, ruminating on it. And what was the one thing he wasn't doing? Swimming.
Yeah.
And that is what we do. And our brain backs this up. And you can Google it. This is an actual image. Your brain, when you say, I'm going to try to do something, and then your brain, when you say, I'm going to do this. So it lights up a little bit when you say try. And it is lit up big, big, big when you say, I'm doing.
Wow.
It's a neuroscience fact, okay? You can liken it to you're in the car and you put the car from park to neutral. Okay, something's going to happen. Everybody's getting ready. So the brain's lighting up a little bit, waiting and ready for a direction, a strong, determined action. And the trying part is where you stay in neutral. Nothing is happening. You're not moving. But then when you go from park to drive, the gears are going, you're starting, the wheels are going, you're starting to move. So if you can hold on to an image like that and ask yourself, why have I been trying to read more books? So why am I keeping myself in neutral? Your brain's listening to you. It's waiting for you to tell it what to do. It doesn't know what to do when you say you're trying. It's like, wait, what? Am I doing it or am I not doing it? Or it's saying, oh, great, I'm only trying. Oh, phew, I don't have to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit in the back seat of the drive.
Yeah, so Carla, I'm curious. You're just a very charismatic and upbeat person. I really enjoy talking with you. And I'm thinking about this man you met in the park and how much of an impact you had on him with just a very brief and sort of simple conversation. How common are these kinds of examples for you? Like, do you just sort of grab somebody and shake them and say, hey, do, don't try, do? Like, how successful are you with that kind of thing when people hear that message like that?
Oh, it is so exciting and so amazing. Well, first of all, I've raised my children to not try from birth. My
Yeah.
my husband, I mean, it's affected his life. All of my friends and the people that know me, that I work with, and they don't try anymore. I
Hmm.
just got a beautiful note from my publicist who said, Carla, taxes are due. And I told my accountant, I'm going to work on this over the weekend. But she said, I told myself, I'm going to have it done. I'm not going to try. I will have this done by Sunday. And had I never met you, had I never worked on this book, I guarantee you, I would not have had this delivered on time to give to her. And I speak to rooms full of people, and you can see their brain just click. And it is such an immediate, effective change, and it's so much fun. And I have so much fun delivering the message. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. I love doing it.
Yeah, I can imagine that the people in your orbit don't get to get away with just complaining about trying and not doing, that your orbit is like people do.
Well, they love me and they hate me because they're like, gosh, now I can't use that anymore, you know? I'll be sitting in a restaurant. I'll overhear like a woman saying to her best friend, I'm trying to, get closer to my sister, or I'm trying to work on that relationship. And I want to jump across the table.
Yeah.
I don't. I want to. And I want to say, what does that look like? I'm trying to get, work on my relationship with my sister. Why would you half-heart that? Why wouldn't you fly across the country if that's where she is and tell her how much you love her? Why wouldn't you make the first step toward an apology or write a letter or send the flowers? Like, go the extra mile. But by her sitting there saying, I'm trying to work on this relationship, that feels good to her because she feels like she's doing something, and she may believe that she's trying with her whole heart, but she's still not doing what it's going to take. And
Yeah.
she may not be successful. That sister may not reciprocate her feelings and may not accept, but you know what's going to happen to her? She will have no regret. She will know I did everything I could to repair my relationship with my sister.
Yeah.
I didn't half-heart it. And that's valuable. That is so valuable. At the end of the day, you won't have your relationship, but you know in your heart that you did everything you could.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing sadder than regret in life, right? Especially as you get older and you look back and you tell yourself all the things you should have done and you didn't, and
Yeah.
you didn't make the effort. And so I agree that if you're making the effort and you do something and it doesn't work out, then at least you're not going to have regret for having made the effort. And I totally agree with that. And let's talk a little bit more about procrastination specifically. I mean, we've been sort of talking around that, but it's such a big one. And I see a lot of my patients. I have quite a number of high school kids, all
Mhm.
very bright, and oftentimes they complain about not starting homework, writing a paper, or studying for exam until the last minute, or it could be work-related projects, anything. And I understand that sort of fear of failing at something may be in that. But of course, like what they notice is when you save something for the last minute, you may be able to get it done in the last minute, but you usually don't get it done as well as you might have if you had started sooner. You were a lot more stressed out. I mean, there's just a lot of negative consequences to procrastinating, even if you get something done. And I'm wondering if you could just say a few more words about this idea of procrastination and how people can approach that. Like, what would you tell your poor teenage kids when they were procrastinating? They had a big thing, and your mom's coming in and saying, "Okay, mama's not going to let you guys do the
Yeah.
trying. Let's do the doing here."
Yeah.
What more can we say about procrastination?
Okay, I'll say quite a bit here, and it doesn't stop. I'll tell a little story about my son who now lives in Texas. Kids especially, of course, you want to play video games, you want to hang out with your friends. It's more appealing to do the fun stuff, right? But trust me, the stress level is so high in these kids, anxiety,
Yeah,
depression, and all of that. One thing you can do to alleviate a lot of stress is get your stuff done. Get it done and get it out of your head first. If you really want a clear mind and you want to have less stress and you actually want to have more time to do the fun stuff, do that. It's called Eat the Frog. Have you heard of that? Do you tell your kids eat the frog?
no, I don't know about Eat the Frog. Tell me about Eat the
This
Frog.
will be really fun for them. And for, if you have young ones at home, anybody listening, it's attributed to Mark Twain. And he basically said, if you have to eat a frog, it's best to do it first thing in the morning. And what that means is you do the worst thing
You
first.
get it out of the way.
And get it out of the way. I have frogs people send me from all over the place. I have little
Oh,
frogs and
nice.
pictures people send me. So it's just like, get it done. It's usually when we're procrastinating, we think that it's going to take so long and it's going to be so hard. And, we think that frog is going to be disgusting and we're going to eat, it's going to take forever. But really, it's not that bad. You know, it takes a lot less time than we've imagined in our head. And then you'll create secondary problems by not doing it right away. So, Eat
Yeah.
the Frog is a fun little tool for young people. My son is 25, he's 26 now, but a year ago he moved to Texas. And I used to make all of his doctor's appointments. So when he moved, I remembered having a conversation with him and I said, you know, you got to find a dentist, you got to find a doctor, you got to find your people. And he goes, okay, I'll try to get around to that. And I'm like, hello, you're talking to your mom here. You're going to try to get around to that. And of course, you know, which is something I want to talk about. He's, Mom, I'm not going to do it. It's not important to me, and I'm not going to do it.
He
I'm
was
not going to
shining
force
you
it.
on, basically.
I'm like, I'm not doing it. He just owned it. And you will not believe what happened very shortly after that. The universe was like listening. He had to have four wisdom teeth removed at the same time. He went into incredible pain. He didn't have a dentist. And that's how, the consequence he suffered because he was procrastinating. He was going to
Yeah.
do it later. And anybody that, you know, if you have to make your, I think the annual skin cancer check for the dermatologist, especially living in Hawaii and California, if you keep saying, I'm going to try to get around to it, I'm procrastinating, right? I'm going to try to talk to my friends about who they go to. I'm going to try to find a new doctor that's in network. I'm going to try to pick the best month to go and you don't do it, you could be missing a diagnosis that could save your life, right?
Yeah.
Procrastinating doesn't work. These kids, they could say, you know what? I'm not going to do that right now. I'm not going to study for my test. I'm not going to clean my room. I'm not going to, you know, call the people I need to call. I'm not going to look for a job right now. Saying I'm not going to do it right now is powerful because you're not going to have all that anxiety and stress and guilt, you know, hiding behind all that.
Well, you're owning the decision. You're basically
Yeah,
saying, I can do this or not do it, and I can choose not to do it. And that's okay if I choose not to do it. And there may or may not be consequences if I don't do it. But I'm not telling myself I'm going to try to do it and then poking yourself that you're not doing it and you should be doing it. And then all that other nonsense. It's just better to either do it, or if you're not going to do it, tell yourself, I don't want to do it. I'm not going to do it. And you're sparing yourself all of that mental gymnastics going on.
absolutely.
It's like
That
torture.
causes all the insomnia and all the anxiety. And by the way, when you finally decide to do it, you're going to come at it much stronger. Okay, I decided not to then, but now I'm deciding to do it and I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So, you know, saying no is so powerful and owning the moment. I think really just saying, no matter how old you are, why am I saying I'm going to try right now? You
Yeah.
know, what's my reason? Is it because I'm afraid of failure? Is it because I want to procrastinate? Is it because I'm afraid of success? Is it because I'm tricking myself into thinking I'm doing? Is it because I don't want to hurt someone's feelings? Instead of saying no, I'm going to say I'm going to try because I think I'm being kind.
Well, I'll tell you, Carla, as a therapist over the many years that I've been practicing, I've really learned like you never, as a therapist, try to convince anybody what they should be doing. You just don't do that. You don't do that. What you
Mhm.
do is you talk to people about different possible courses of actions and let them understand what the consequences of both of them are and make sure they understand that the choice is theirs, what they decide to do. So it's kind of that same sort of idea, I think.
It really is. Like, you know, I said, you can still choose to try. But at least know what that means. It means that you're not going all in and that you are choosing to half heart whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you're not giving yourself the best chance of success. But when you change your language and you decide to do something, if you want to be brave and do something, you're going to learn so much, you know, because doing like it won't guarantee you the success you're looking for, but you're definitely going to have a much better chance getting it. You're going to learn to face your fears. You're going to learn how to pivot. Okay, I jumped in and I decided to do this, but wow, I was rejected on that corner. Okay, I'm going to have to go this way. I'm going to have to see if I can get it that way. You're going to become more reliable to other people when you say you're doing things. You're going to be accountable. You're not going to have regrets. You know, there's so much good stuff that comes with saying, I'm not going to try. I am going to be brave and I'm going to do this whether I succeed or fail, but I'm going to tell my that this is the course of direction we're going, and I'm going to just keep going until I hit my mark.
Yeah. This might be a good time to talk about another interesting concept that you talked about in your book that I thought was really interesting. And that has to do with the difference between an excuse and a reason for not
Mm.
doing something. Could you say a little bit about that?
Sure. A reason is a valid justification for not doing something. And an excuse is basically just giving a reason because you don't want to do something. So a reason is a valid justification. So, for example, the person that says, I can't lose weight, my reason is that the medication I'm on adds water weight and I'm not able to lose weight. I'm on steroids and I'm making me hungry. Like I physically can't lose weight. My medication causes weight gain, as opposed to the excuse of, oh, I couldn't stick to my diet because the parties that I go to and the people in my household, they don't have the food I need. That's an excuse because anybody knows if you're going to a party, you either eat before, have the protein shake, or bring your own snacks, right? That's just so there is a big a difference between an excuse and a reason.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. And one of those excuses, I think, is blaming other people or other things, external sources for the reason why you're telling yourself you can't do something in that excuse category. And you talk about that as a defense mechanism called deflection. And of course, as a psychologist, my ears perk up every time I hear the term defense mechanism because we love talking about that. So tell
Sure.
us a little bit about deflection. How does that work in this world of making excuses and blaming external things for it?
Yeah, you're deflecting it off yourself. Like there it is. It's the blaming outside sources and other things and not making yourself accountable and owning whatever is the reason that you can't do it or not do it. So, we'll even deflect to a line, a Starbucks line, sorry, the line at Starbucks was too long. I couldn't get here, on time. Or my teacher, if for your students, they go too fast in the classroom, or nobody likes that teacher. Well, I can't understand them. We're just deflecting any accountability or responsibility on ourselves to create the change that we need to get whatever it is done.
Yeah, so by deflecting accountability, you're basically not blaming yourself and you're not feeling badly about yourself or responsible for your own actions. It becomes a lot easier and a lot psychologically safer, I suppose, to deflect and blame somebody else for it.
Feels better, and it allows us to perpetuate and keep it going,
Yeah.
if it's always somebody else's fault.
You also talk about this interesting concept about the inner critic versus the destructive critic. And I'm taking it that there's the inner critic isn't necessarily a negative thing. There's some benefit to having an inner critic. But when that inner critic becomes a destructive critic, we have some problems. Can you talk a little bit more about the distinction between those and how you formulate that in these ideas?
Well, yeah, the inner critic is, oh, you're so weak. You're so lazy. You'll never be able to do it. Nobody's going to support you. You're too old. You're too young. These are all the reasons that we try because we're listening to that inner critic. In writing my book, disclaimer here, I'm 62 years old. And if I would have, listened to even my own inner critic of, seriously, Carla, you've never written a book before. You're not a doctor.
Right.
You're not an author. Who are you to write this book? Who's going to believe you? And of course, you get the imposter syndrome going on and all that. But we listen to our inner critic, and you have to silence that voice. That's really important. And when you say, that's another reason, like really, when I say I'm trying to do this and I'm afraid to dive in, am I listening to my inner critic? Is there some voice inside me that says you're weak and you're lazy and that you can't do it or you're too old or too young? Because it's not true. It's just
Yeah.
things that you've heard from other people that you've incorporated. I used to smoke and I was dating my now husband, and he said, look, if we're going to continue a relationship, you can't really be smoking. And instead of saying I'm trying to quit smoking, which I would never do because I don't try, I became a person who doesn't smoke anymore. How to deal with that inner critic is, maybe at one point in my life I was lazy, but I'm not. I don't identify with that person anymore. I'm not a person who is lazy. I am a person who now does what it takes. I'm not going to lean on that. So we can't listen to that inner critic.
Yeah. Well, you did make a distinction in the book about there can be a critical part of yourself that's more sort of objective and trying to assess this is what's going on and what can I do to change this or make it better. And that's
Hmm.
more like, I don't know, maybe the term for that might be like the rational critic or the objective ego or something like that in
Yeah.
psychological terms. But then there's this negative destructive part, which is the part that's criticizing and telling you you have these negative personality traits or these habits that are going to make it impossible. You're too old, you're not smart enough, you don't have an
Yeah.
education, all of those things.
Yeah, like of course, the one that we've listened to is, if you're meeting somebody new, I'll give an example, but you tend to be very aggressive, it's like, well, Carla, you're a very aggressive person, don't mess this up, or I'm just making something up.
Yeah.
You can let the inner critics guide you to protect you, keep you safe, and help you to succeed, but those other voices are so much louder. And that makes me really sad that people, cave into that. And by the way, that inner critic gets so loud when we try and fail. So here's the cycle,
Yeah.
okay? The minute you say, I'm going to try to quit smoking, all right? And then so you try to quit smoking, you have a cigarette, the inner critic gets really loud. You're a loser, you're weak, you're such a failure, you're never going to quit. And then what happens next is you just give up.
Yeah.
And that cycle just repeats and repeats. Talk to the person that's tried to quit smoking or tried, for months or years, or the person that's trying to lose weight forever and ever and ever, but they just can't seem to stay on. It's because they're trying
Yeah.
and they're just keeping that loop going.
Yeah, I can tell you in the therapy office, that kind of thing comes up a lot because we're always trying to work with our patients to set up situations where they can practice and do something differently and have a good experience from it, and then gain the evidence and data that when they do something, it'll work out and they feel better about it. But there's always that fear that it might not go the way that you expect it to go. And the concern there is that that reinforces exactly what you're saying, this idea that I can't do it. But, of course, you just have to do it again and also recognize that you learn from your experiences where you made mistakes or things didn't go perfectly and use that as evidence and data for how to do it differently the following time.
Yeah. A great example is, for anybody that's listening to this and going like, so how do I do this? How do I make that change is start small. Start really small. Like I love the junk drawer analogy. So I think everybody on the planet has a junk drawer, and
Yeah.
mine is in the kitchen. And I can barely close it. It's got tape dispensers and pens that don't work, and receipts and seeds and tools and all. It's just like disgusting. And you may say in your mind, every time I open it to get something, I got to try to make the time to clean this out. I got to try to clean it out. Well, that's a very small thing that you can do is clean that junk. It takes very little time, and you can't even believe the massive hits of dopamine and serotonin and adrenaline. Like you're just feel so good and so proud of that little tiny thing. And what happens when you stop trying to do that little thing and you get it done? Now you want to start attacking under your kitchen sink,
Sure.
and then the garage that you've wanted to try to get around to cleaning. And then you just grow from there. We tend to think that you have to wait to be motivated. I'm trying, I'm not ready to do it. I'm waiting for the motivation just to do it, Carla. I'm just not motivated. Well, motivation doesn't happen first.
Yeah.
When you start doing something, you start going to the gym and you start realizing how fun it is there, and you're meeting people and your body is changing and it feels, you're sleeping better. You're getting all the good positive things from, you know, getting out there into the world looking for a job and you feel pride in sending out those resumes or making the change or being brave and having the conversation with someone you've been afraid to have. Once you start doing that, that's where the motivation comes from
Yeah.
doing it.
Well, I think most of the time people do see like a snowball effect where when you start doing something, you end up getting more done than you thought you would, and then you're motivated by that. So most of
Yeah.
the time, I know that's the case for me. And yeah, for sure. I also wanted to mention like I have such respect for writers because I just finished writing my novel When Earth Blinks, which is going to be released in a month. And now I've read your book, Stop Trying, and I read your friend's book, Peter Weiss's book, Progeny, and a number of books like that. And boy, after you do that, you really respect like how much work and perseverance and grit it takes to finish something. Like it's just a massive project, and just, my respect for writers, like it's really something, because there's so many ways that you could tell yourself, I shouldn't do this. It's just not going to work out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Congratulations to you. I'm so excited to read When the Earth Blinked.
Thank
And,
you.
and it doesn't stop, the writing of the book and then the promoting of the book and,
Yep.
sharing and making it something that people can actually find. The work keeps going. But yeah, a lot of people, millions of people, have said, I want to try to write a book, but they never proceed past that. And, a little drop of neuroscience here is, when you are at the party or hanging out with your friends at lunch and you're like, yeah, I'm trying to write this book, your brain is getting, remember I said it lights up a little bit. It's getting those hits of dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline, all those things because it sounds really good. It feels exciting. But if you don't progress past that, that hit and that kick just goes away. Unfortunately, for some people, that's enough.
So another thing that you talk about in Stop Trying is this idea when it comes to doing about prioritizing. And I thought this was interesting. And you talked about a concept that I'd never heard of before, which you call the Eisenhower matrix. It was pretty an interesting concept. And I'd love to hear if you can just explain a little bit to us what the Eisenhower matrix is about and how we could look at that as a concept to help us make our own decisions and prioritizing what we're doing.
Okay, yeah, the Eisenhower matrix, it actually was created by Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was a very good organizer. He knew how to manage his time. It's basically a block. And if you go to my website, which is stop-trying.com, actually, it's in the book. There's URLs in the book. Then you can download a version of the Eisenhower Matrix and the Wellness Wheel, which I really love, are great tools.
Yeah.
But Eisenhower is 4 blocks and it's urgent, not urgent. And then horizontally is important and not important. So you get to put in there what is urgent that I have to do right now? Is it important and urgent? Is it important but not urgent? Is it not important? Or, is it something that I can eliminate? So do I have to do it? Do I have to schedule it? Can I delegate it? Or can I eliminate it?
Hmm.
And so when we have all these lists, having a tool like the Eisenhower Matrix can help you prioritize, oh my gosh, I can eliminate these 4 things altogether. And these are the things that are urgent and I have to do right away. And these are some things that I can delegate to other people. Imagine if you're moving. I think that's the example I use in the book. I can and delegate somebody to do these things for me, but I absolutely have to do these things right now. It's a really wonderful tool that you can use, and it's available to everybody if you want to Google that. Prioritizing our goals is so important. Making sure that they are realistic is so important. You're all over the place mentally when you have this things that you're trying to do in your head. Even if you're writing them on a list, it's overwhelming. And unless you can prioritize them and make sure that they're realistic, you won't have clarity and you'll just keep spinning around in circles.
Yeah, I like that. So, as we're kind of getting toward the end of our talk here, I'd like to leave this with talking about some of the positive consequences of having a doing mindset. And you list a lot of them toward the end of your book, and I think they're really wonderful. Do you want to sort of, we've got reaching goals, having more control. There's a bunch of these. Like, what are some of your favorites here?
Well, I think the first one for me is not having any regret.
Yeah,
So when you go from trying your whole life to, doing something and not at least giving it your best effort, the regret is the worst thing. So that's a really big reason. Positive thing is that you won't have regrets. I
yeah.
love that.
Yeah, you
Um,
I mean, Carla, we talked about this a little before. I mean, you very rarely hear somebody say, I did that, it didn't work, and I regret having done it.
yeah,
You rarely see
yeah,
that. The people who have regrets are the ones who didn't do the things that they wanted to do and didn't have the opportunity to succeed or fail. You never see that. At least I don't, not in my
absolutely.
practice.
Yeah. And we think that we have forever. This is a very sombering thing to say, sobering and it's somber, but we think that we have forever. I'm trying to do it. I'll get around to do it. I'm trying to, but we
Yeah.
don't have forever. Like
Nope.
we don't know when our time is over. You may have 80 years, you may have 40 years. So knowing that I think is really important. So the time is now and doing is now. Trying is infinite and later. So also keep in mind that we don't have forever. So if there's something that's meaningful and important to you, if there's something that's calling you from your heart and your soul, do it now. You may not have next week. Okay.
Yes.
So that's important. In a business sense, one of the really positive things that comes out of not trying and doing is those are the people, the doers are the ones that get promoted.
Hmm.
The doers are the ones that get recognized. They move up the corporate ladder. They are the leaders of the team because people hear your words. Wow. They said they were going to have that report on my desk by 5 o'clock, and they did.
Hmm.
This person, whenever he says he's going to do something, I get the phone call before 5, or he delivers the contact that I was waiting for. We count on people when they say they're going to do something for us, and when you deliver, you're going to be promoted in work. Okay. And if you're in sales and you say, I'm going to try to close, 2 deals today, or I'm going to try to sell 4 tickets today, what you're doing is you're putting yourself in second place. You're already implying, I may not do it. The second you say, I'm trying to do it today, you are opening up the possibility for excuses, blame, zero accountability, and it may not happen. Failure is right there. But when you say, I am going to close this deal today, I'm going to sell those tickets today, what happens is your brain causes you and forces you to think outside the box. It's like, oh, I did this and it didn't work. Now, what am I going to do? In fact, if you are a leader and you have your business meeting and you say, look, everybody, this month we're going to try to increase sales. And this month we're going to try to have more Instagram videos, or we're going to become more social media content. Let's try to be more social media conscious. Everybody in that room hears it's optional,
Yeah.
only trying. And by the time they go back to their offices, they've already forgotten it, because the brain just holds it in this neutral
Yeah.
space. But if you say to your team, we are going to increase sales this month, and we are going to have more presence and have more subscribers, those people immediately start thinking, okay, what do I have to do to make that happen? What steps can I take? Your brain is going into drive mode and the wheels and the gears are turning, and they're not forgetting it by the time they get to their office because it's not optional now. Now we're doing it. So you become a stronger leader, you become seen as a leader. I think you'll have a lot less anxiety. You're going to sleep better. You're going to be more confident. You're not going to be afraid of failing so much. So you're going to have more fun. That's one of the biggest things. I think
Yeah.
people that start doing just have much more fun. So there's just a few of the things you failure. I look forward to it now. I'm like, bring it on. I'm going to
Yeah.
do this new thing, and let me see how I'm going to fail and what I'm going to learn from that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's sort of a idea, you build confidence, it sounds like you build confidence, and then the potential or possibility for succeeding at something is exciting. You assume, I'm going to do this and I'm going to succeed. And if I don't succeed, that's okay. One last thing you mentioned about increasing self-compassion. Where does self-compassion fall into this doing mindset?
So, yeah, like I said, doing doesn't equal success, but it gives you a better chance. So you allow yourself the grace to fail and fail big and allow yourself that. You know that you're stepping into the deep end, you're diving in and you don't have to know everything, you have to be compassionate with yourself and know that I'm going to be brave and do this, and I'm going to have to learn along the way, and I'm going to have to think about things differently than I have before. And I think you have to be very compassionate with yourself.
Carla, this has been a super fun conversation, very lively and engaging, and I've really enjoyed speaking with you about Stop Trying. Are there any final thoughts or last messages you would like to leave us with before we finish up?
Sure. The thing I want to leave everybody with is have fun with this. Like, really have fun with it. You could ask your family, can you guys point out to me every time I say try? You won't believe how much we say it, like, in a day. So, you could even put a try jar in your office or at home. And if anybody says try and they get caught, they have to put, a chip in there or a piece of paper. And whoever says it the least all week gets to, have coffee bought for them or something. But have fun with it. It's like a superpower. It's not something that comes natural because we've been taught to try and we've been doing it our whole lives. But I'd say number one, have fun. Really start noticing when people say they're going to try on your behalf to you. I'll try to call you back. I'll try to make that connection. I'll try to whatever. And how much you say it. And then the last thing I want to say is when you do say it, like, take some time for yourself. Everybody has something in their life that they've been trying to do. We all do. And ask yourself, what's my try and why have I been trying instead of doing it?
Yeah.
And then take those first brave steps to do it. And it's very exciting.
Well, those are really wise words. And I'll have to say, Carla, since I've met you, I've been really paying attention to my use of the word try. It's
Yeah.
just, I'm sort of obsessed with it now because I read your book and I'm thinking about it. And I have, I guess I have to admit, I use the word try way more than I probably should or I'd like to, and I'm not even consciously aware of it. And the funny thing is, I do see myself as a doer. I do a lot of things. And so when I'm using the word try, I'm like, why am I saying try if I'm normally a doer? Am I holding myself back from my maximum potential, or am I psyching myself out in ways I don't realize it? So it's a really interesting and stimulating mental exercise, and I really appreciate and thank you for pointing that out.
I can't even try clothes on when I go to the, with my shopping with my daughter. Like, people say, I'm going to go try this on in the fitting room. I say, I'm going to put this on. Like, I
Yeah,
am so reprogrammed. And I wish that for you, although it's going to take some time.
yeah, it is. Well, that's really, really fascinating. Thank you for that. Carla, it's been wonderful having you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining me. I've learned a lot, and I know you will continue to spread this message about the word try and the mindset of growth and doing. Thank you so much for the message, and I hope we continue to stay in touch around this great work that you're doing.
We can and we will. And I'm so grateful for your time as well. It's been great.
Thank you for listening to MindTricks Radio. I hope you have enjoyed the program. For more information about MindTricks, you can go to my website, www.waikikihealth.com. Be sure to subscribe to MindTricks on your preferred podcasting host to be notified of new episodes of MindTricks. Please take some time to give MindTricks a good rating and review wherever you are listening. It really helps get the word out to new listeners. And please like and share MindTricks posts on Twitter and Facebook by following your host, Dr. Aaron Kaplan.